to more than 24,000 homes, farms, schools, and businesses in Nevada and Placer counties.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Nevada County Interviews, and I'm your host, Paul Minicucci. And we can tell up here in Nevada County that when the days get short and the weather turns cool and the trees burst forth their glorious colors, we know fall is upon us and we're in the month of November. And of course, in November, we have the remembrance that we call Veterans Day. I want to welcome everyone to the set. Thank you for coming. We have Paige Brown, seated to my left, Gary Brown.
Hi.
We have Rob Gershon, Donna Ars, and George Jacobs. And our guests today are all connected in one way or another with serving our veterans when they come home from the war. So I want to start, as we normally do, to get a little personal information from everybody so that our audience will know who you are. Paige, where were you born and raised?
I was born at Fort Monmouth, New Jersey.
Mm-hmm. You grew up on the East Coast?
No, I grew up in California. Dad got stuck in the war in Korea.
Uh-huh. And so now you're a psychologist.
I'm a clinical and forensic psychologist in private practice.
And so when did you first get started in working with veterans?
In 1997, I started working under a contract that I hold with the VA.
Right. And that contract actually grew into Welcome Home Vets?
Well, it was the genesis for Welcome Home Vets because there are limits to the contract that didn't make much sense.
Mm-hmm. And Gary, you're the executive director.
I am, right.
And how did you first get started in working with vets?
Well, Paige is my wife, and as we just talked about the limitations of her contract, we realized that there were a number of veterans not being adequately served here at the local level. And about in 2009, we put together Welcome Home Vets as a way of continuing treatment for those veterans here in Nevada County, and also expanding that treatment to families and persons who were suffering from trauma as a result of their service in the military other than in combat.
Right. And we'll get back to you guys and we'll talk a little bit more. Rob, I know you're a veteran, and where did you serve and when?
Yes, I was in the United States Air Force, and I was at Castle Air Force Base from 84 to 88.
Mm-hmm. And you're on the advisory board for the Forgotten Soldier program. Tell us, how'd you get on the advisory board? How'd you come to know Donna?
Yes, well, I came to know Donna from an event that we had at the Sierra College. They had a big event there to help veterans out, and I just found out about it and went there and hooked up with Donna and hooked up with a counselor there, Stan, and started receiving services there. Post-traumatic stress disorder services and other services as well.
Okay. Well, we can pass the mic over to Donna. So Donna, how did you first get started working with veterans?
Have a private practice, and Vietnam veterans were coming to see me, and they were falling through the cracks. There was a need that wasn't being fulfilled. The gift I have is being able to see the war inside of them. So they started coming, started getting help. We created the Forgotten Soldier program, which is a nonprofit, and we help bring the rhythm back to their lives.
Great. And George, you have the most probably unique service providing therapy for our veterans. Tell us a little bit about your program.
Well, we provide equine therapy for service members that are returning from combat and their families. And I'm a collaborative partner with the Soldiers Project, which provides free psychological counseling for returning veterans and their families free of charge and completely confidential. So we are an adjunct therapy for the Soldiers Project clinical practice, and we have equine therapy at the ranch in Smartsville.
Now, you're from the Midwest originally. Is that where you learned to have a love affair with horses that you have?
Oh, well, I was born in Iowa, and I got my first horse at the age of 8, and she has a pretty hard bark on her, but I just loved her, and that stayed with me for the rest of my life.
Great. We're going to talk more about how this program works. Really fascinating. So, Paige, tell us what Welcome Home Vets is in a nutshell. What is our audience?
It might make a little bit more sense for me to talk about my contract.
Sure. Let's talk about how that worked, how that evolution took place.
I have a contract that allows free psychological services for individual and group therapy to combat veterans living farther than 50 miles from a VA hospital. I can only see combat vets who are unrated for PTSD. I can't see their family members, and I can't see other forms of military-related trauma. And I'm only allowed to see them for 1 year. So now, especially with the Iraq and Afghanistan vets returning, that's just insufficient.
Right.
And that's where Welcome Home Vets came in to pick up the gap.
So the Veterans Administration has services for the first year, but not beyond that.
Right, under this contract.
Under this contract.
Right.
Okay, so as Executive Director, Welcome Home Vets, what kinds of exactly services do you run? How many vets do you serve, that kind of thing?
Okay, we've got approximately 32 vets in service that we're providing services for right now. We provide services through contract therapists like Paige and her colleague Mark Thielen. That provides ongoing therapy after the year has expired, and they're actually given the option at that point of going to Auburn or Reno for services. But most vets don't want to change therapists after they've been in therapy for a year. Group therapy is one of the major healing modalities that Paige has found, and they don't want to go to a new group of people for all the reasons that people have PTSD.
Right. Well, and trust being one of the major issues.
Trust being one of the major issues.
So now, do you treat families as well?
Well,
or how do you involve the family?
I'm glad you asked that. We just signed a contract with Nevada County Behavioral Health for 3 years to do an innovative program and study of the needs of family members of veterans who have PTSD. We'll be doing some focus groups to find out from them what they think their needs are. We're also doing focus groups with therapists in the area to find out what their experience with these folks is. And then we will put together a program which will go over a 3-year period of time, or at least under this funding. It's going to continue after that. But we're using a pre-treatment evaluation tool, post-treatment evaluation tool, and the plan is to provide treatment for them based on their specific needs.
Paige, how do you get referrals? Who refers the vets to you?
Generally, the veteran has gone to the county veteran service office for something like hearing loss, and they're screened there for PTSD symptoms. Then, if that comes out positive, the vet rep will send a copy of their discharge papers to the Citrus Heights Vet Center, which manages my contract. They're given a screening there, and then they're referred to me. Occasionally, I will get the referral directly, but they need to be screened by the vet center.
Right. And in your experience, what percentage of soldiers do you think who have PTSD are actually getting referrals?
Oh my goodness, I have no idea. What I'm noticing with these current wars is it's taking them 4 or 5 years before they seek treatment.
Right.
Unlike, 40 years for the Vietnam vets.
Right. And that's another one of those hallmarks of PTSD.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I know when I worked in the California legislature, we did work on some programs for PTSD as well as traumatic brain injury, which is a related issue. I think it's probably fair to say there's a lot of soldiers who have been traumatized, but either go off self-medicating or doing other things and never end up being treated through the system. I think that's one of the issues, isn't it?
Well, what I'm finding is that when they come home, if they're the young enlistees, they think they're fine. And they have to go out there and fail a few times before they're ready for treatment. Now, I mentioned earlier that I'm a forensic psychologist. I've been seeing a lot of vets that are in jail.
Right.
And that certainly is a good impetus to get some treatment.
Now, do you ever have the case where a wife or a family member will come to you and say, my loved one, my vet, has these symptoms, distrust, anger, sleeplessness, those kinds of things? Do you get family members bringing people in?
Yes, that's not uncommon at all because they're living with it.
Right.
And sometimes they can see it more clearly than the vet himself.
Right. And, it seems to me, we've had other shows about vets, it seems to me that while it might be expensive, it would be wonderful to have a program that really involves families right after the vet returns.
Oh, yeah.
We could save a whole bunch of money and horror and every trauma down the line if we were able to treat it earlier, I'm sure. So one last question for you guys, and I'll move on, is what's the difference, do you think? I've heard that there's a big difference between the kind of trauma that people in Afghanistan and Iraq have faced versus the Vietnam veteran. Is that a common idea? Or?
Well, one of the big differences between the wars is that the newer vets have had multiple deployments. Right. They've experienced something called stop loss.
Right.
Which
I love that euphemism.
Yeah, it's an involuntary extension of tour when they're in country.
Right.
And that makes it very different. Plus, they've got nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. There's no jungle to hide behind.
Right.
And they got those IEDs, the roadside bombs, to deal with on a constant basis.
And a lot of the vets in this theater are coming off of a reserve unit, not an enlisted type situation.
That's been a very interesting phenomenon because the reservists in the National Guard are older than regular Army or Marine Corps. So what I'm seeing is that they're more they've had a life, they go to war, they come back, they see they're different right away, and they're getting into treatment right away. But what is happening is that even though they understand it, they're slipping into the PTSD symptoms anyway. It seems unavoidable.
Right. And I think we have a poster. I'm not sure that it was flashed up there. Tell us a little bit about this.
This is a community awareness event that we're holding tomorrow, Veterans Day, at 5:30 p.m. We're using the social hall at Emmanuel Episcopal Church in Grass Valley. We were given the movie War Torn, 1861 to 2010 by HBO. It was a special they aired last year and then gave it to us with the stipulation that we use it for community education without a fee. So it's a free event. Some of the money that we do spend on advertising and so forth comes from one of the contracts we have with Nevada County Behavioral Health. Following the movie, there's going to be a panel discussion between, we will have Paige and her colleague Mark. On the panel, we'll have Vietnam veterans, Middle East veterans, and spouses. So we will have the panel discussion followed by question and answer. Everybody's invited to attend.
All right, so people out there, if you're listening and you get this in time, come to the event. Donna.
Yes.
Now, Donna, you said you had gifts to be able to see the war within the soul of people. Tell us a little bit about what you mean.
I work with Chinese medicine and alternative health care. When someone comes to me, I can see that their rhythm's off, and the pictures play like a movie camera in my head. So they don't have to tell me what they're dealing with and go through months and months of counseling. We can work on the issues where they are right at the time. I have people in my office that I can put them in the schedules, and huge changes happen.
Mm-hmm. We're going to, I think, if we can, play a little PSA that'll explain a little bit more about your program. If we can roll that.
Brave men and women who have served our country often return with physical, mental, and spiritual injuries that can last a lifetime. Working with so many of these veterans has made me realize that some of our heroes were not getting the help they needed in hopes of returning to a peaceful and productive life. I had a calling that led to the creation of the Forgotten Soldier Program. This is a nonprofit organization that brings a holistic approach to mending the bodies, minds, and souls of our veterans, regardless of when or where they have served. We have held several events this year that has welcomed soldiers from all wars, with the hope of bringing peace and tranquility back into their lives. We rely on donations and our volunteers to keep us going. Any gift is appreciated to help truly bring the forgotten soldier home.
Great. So that explains a little bit about the program. Unfortunately, your program is a whole bunch more complex than that.
A lot more complex.
So tell us, first of all, now you do have interface with veterans of various functions, like stand-downs and that kind of thing.
We've worked all the stand-downs this year. The only one we missed was the one in Dixon and the one in Sacramento. Take a group of people that are there to work with the soldiers, and our tables are never empty. We left the Roseville stand down with probably 12 people still waiting in line, and we couldn't see them all. There were so many. So we have complimentary services at the office in Auburn. That's how we met Rob. Rob came to us, has been with us the last year and a half, and we help wherever the need is, from finding them homes to getting the homeless home. We got 4 homeless people home last year. It was quite wonderful to put one on a bus and him to call us later and say that he was home with his family.
And so when you talk about a holistic approach, you're not trying to just treat a particular neurosis or psychosis or anything particular. You're looking at a whole person, their body, their soul, their mind, their emotions, all in one package.
We're looking at everything. For an example, we see one World War II veteran. He's 86 years old. Our youngest one is 20. Everyone has a different thing that they're dealing with. Mather has sent us a young man. He's 32 years old with traumatic brain injury. His scale was at 15 pain level. He's down to a 1 now. So he comes weekly to see us. He gets the needs met that he needs. Everybody is a different case. No one is the same. Everyone's treated whatever they need.
So tell us a little bit about the services. What kind of services do you go? What do you actually do with the?
Okay, we have myself, Chinese medicine, life coaching, spiritual direction, nutrition, whatever the vet needs. If the family needs to be seen, we also see the family or the children. We do art therapy. We have a psychologist that's in the office. We have a marriage family counselor. The psychologist does biofeedback to help bring the rhythm of the brain back. Army's one source is referring people. The vets are referring the vets. So they're coming from everywhere, and the success stories are there.
Right. So you don't need a referral that has a diagnosis with it. You'll take people however they come.
Yes, and if someone walks into our waiting room and wants to be seen, we set them an appointment and we see them.
Okay. And where is your office is located? You're in Auburn?
It's in Auburn at 991 Lincoln Way. Great building. The landlord has given us a space just for the soldiers. The advisory board, which Rob is on, they help. Once they get their healing and come to the terms of where they are, they help the other vets. So we have vets helping vets.
Rob, I want to turn to you.
Sure.
So how did you first come to, what happened to you? Tell us your story. You got out of the service in 86, you said?
No, 88.
88. And what happened?
Well, I got out of the service, and I didn't realize I had anything going on with me, especially post-traumatic disorders. I did have some self-medicating and things like that going on, and had a real struggle in my life for several years. And with that, with just struggling for years, I didn't know where to turn to. So once I met Donna and I met the crew, if you will, at the Forgotten Soldier program at that Sierra College event, the minute I sat down with the therapist, I knew I was in the right place. You know, he pegged me my makeup, if you will, exact, you know. And then I went in and started seeing him on a weekly basis, and I've been seeing him for over a year now on a weekly basis, and we're dealing with all different issues, you know, post-traumatic just being one issue. I am clean and sober, and don't have that issue going on anymore. But I do have, you know, other things going on still with the post-traumatic, with nightmares and
Right.
whatnot. But it's definitely gotten a lot better, and just got married in December of this past year, and you know, things are doing much better.
Now, so you weren't aware that you were experiencing PTSD. Were you aware that the Rob that came back out of the service was different than the guy who went in?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
And what do you think would be for our veterans who are particularly in the war zone? What kind of services ought we have? Is there some kind of gateway that every soldier should go through, do you think, when they come back home?
Well, there should be some kind of assessment, you know, done for them, and they should be able to feel really comfortable walking into any of these services that we have here today, you know. And I'm living proof of that.
Right.
Whether it's services from the VA or even the equine therapy, I've touched different bases in all these areas, and it's changed my life. Mm-hmm. My life is not the same. I'm not the same person.
You know, I think it's fair to say America doesn't do a good job in our healthcare system at all on the front end. You know, we're sort of critical care based. So if you show up in the hospital and you're about to die, there's no amount of money that we would spend on you to keep you alive. Mm-hmm. But, you know, should you be needing mental health services, that's just not there. So we really appreciate the services. So how did Donna ask you if you would come on the advisory board?
But yes, she just asked if I could, you know, share my experiences with other vets and help in any way that I could, and I was, you know, more than happy to do that. I mean, for me, you know, I think it's, you know, I know the services for me are free, but I also feel as a vet, you know, maybe I can help in any way with other vets, you know, and I feel that I can't give, you know, I can't keep what I have unless I give it away. And that's just been my motto for some years now. And any way that I can help when new vets come in, I'm there. And actually, part of what we've also created at the Forgotten Soldier program is a kind of a 12-step based recovery meeting that meets once a week. So that's something that I participate in.
Right. Now, Donna, I know you have some photos, some JPEGs. And if we can cue up the JPEGs, Donna, you can explain to us what we're seeing.
Okay. This is at the Marysville event. Linda is doing Bowen therapy and some craniosacral on this vet, and I think this veteran is a Vietnam vet.
And what is it that this therapy does for the vet? I mean, is it a relaxation?
It's a relaxation, but it also brings the rhythm back to their body, where the imprints that they store in their body, anything negative leaves. Mm-hmm. The person has to be willing to do the work and be aware and work with us. And they feel safe on these tables. I've never seen anyone get off, and it's life-changing.
Mm-hmm. And so the therapist's role here is what? I mean, are you... the physical touch is the important part where you bond with the person, or?
Well, we ask them what's going on with their bodies, but we also know, because we're all very highly trained in what we're doing, and we can pretty well tell where they hold this emotional trauma and the stress and what's going on with them. This is Phyllis working on a young soldier here at the event, too. He's actually in active duty. He was there helping. You can tell he still has part of his uniform on there. And he was home on leave. This is our 86-year-old World War II veteran, Andy, and he's getting the toxics out of his system in these foot bath, and lots of metal that came out of his system there, and he said we could share that. He's a great guy. Mm-hmm. This is George. He's one of the recruiters that comes to the events and helps. The acupuncturist is doing acupuncture on him here and relieving some things, and he's trying to quit smoking and some other things with his body. So good stuff. That's me working on an Air Force veteran and helping her with some things that she's dealing with grief.
And where are you?
This one is at Sarah College. This is also at Sarah College, the art therapist, marriage family counselor on the left, working with some family members, and one of the chaplains there also doing artwork.
Okay.
This is the wall climbing, the young Iraqi Afghanistan vets having their challenge going up and working on some things there. So there was many things at Sarah College that we did.
Do the returning vets who might have PTSD have trouble with these kinds of trust issues and being up off the ground, that kind of thing?
No, they like these kind of things.
Really?
They're they like danger, so they like this. Mm-hmm.
Right. The movie The Hurt Locker from a couple of years ago, I think, brought that out about the need some soldiers have to live through that adrenaline.
There's a Vietnam vet. There's also General Hipwell. He's the vice president of our board. He just retired. And there's George again, and then General Hipwell's daughter at the Sarah College event. And General Hipwell just did a speech at the event we just did at the Memorial Hall a week ago Saturday.
And I guess it's very helpful to you to have a general sort of, give you the approval, the imprimatur.
Right. Martial arts, we do breaking of the boards where they put their challenges and things they'd like to break through. This is a young vet. Here's General Hipwell breaking through the board and breaking through their challenges.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if that's the last one or not. It is. So your program consists of a lot of different features. It's mental, emotional,
Physical.
Physical. You're dealing with the arts. You're dealing with other kinds of, I guess, do you have journal writing and other kinds of
We also
introspection?
work with peer-to-peer with the family groups. That's set up through Army OneSource. And we saw approximately 72 vets free of charge in the center in the month of October.
So how many vets would you expect to see in this next calendar year, let's say? Do you have an idea? I mean, I know it's growing.
It's growing all along. We just added 2 new therapists, so I don't know. They just come, and when they come, we see them.
Yeah. And I think, we owe you a great debt of gratitude because I know you guys are always struggling for funding, which is an amazing thing, isn't it?
Well,
that you
right
can
now
raise funding for your soldiers.
it's service, and we'll never turn anyone away.
Yeah. Well, George, you have a really interesting program. Tell us a little bit about how you first got started working with horses in equine therapy. How did that all begin?
Well, I began working with horses about 20 years ago. I had been an analytical chemist, and then I had a life-changing experience and started working with horses in Nevada, and I was starting wild horses and began to set up a communication-type relationship with them in order to do the training. And as I progressed with that, I started to work with people and give them writing lessons. That's how it started. And I could see the change in the people as they were working with the horse, and things that they were struggling with would be kind of ameliorated or greatly reduced just by being around the horses. And I felt the same thing myself, that just being in their presence was a very calming and reassuring situation. The horses accept you completely without judgment for who you are, and they see you for who you are.
And I know in an article I read you said horses are more higher civilian, or more civil than people, and certainly they're more honest.
Yes.
How do you know a horse is honest?
Well, they give you 100% of their truth all the time.
Yeah.
And they give you as much as you can take.
Right.
And it's up to you to determine that limit. It's
What are the
unlimited
special
limit.
features that horses bring to the table that other animals don't, perhaps?
Well, they're large. They present a kind of a physical barrier that could be used in a therapeutic way. If something that's large and unmanageable in a person's mind can be changed and managed, then that's an accomplishment for them, and that's a learning experience for them. Mm-hmm. Horses are very, very perceptive, and they have the ability to mirror a person's emotional state. So working with the client and a horse, by simply observing the horse, you can see where the client is at, and the client won't tell you many times that they're anxious or they're afraid or anything, but the horse will tell you just by their actions, because the mirror that they provide in their language, which is nonverbal, tells you exactly where the client is, and so you can just go with that.
Let's talk a little bit about the horses. Where do you find them, and what kind of breeds do you use?
Well, all of my horses have been given to me from some kind of rescue situation. So I have 4 Arabian horses, 1 Morgan, and 1 appendix quarter horse. And the more important than the breed is the horse's ability to be a horse. For them to be able to use their language, which is nonverbal, and their energy and their intuitive type of communication to connect with a person. And when this connection happens, it's a thing called unity, where one and another are almost one energy and mind, and that's where the healing starts to really happen.
Now, do the horses, if they come to you from a rescue situation, they've had to deal with trauma themselves, does it take them a while before they're able to communicate, or do they pretty much get with the program right away, that this is a supportive program that you have and they can feel that?
That's an interesting question. It depends on what has happened to them. Some of them will be dissociated for a long time, and they'll just kind of be off by themselves. And I've seen instances where a client has a similar situation where they may have been a victim of sexual trauma or something like that, and this horse and this person will get together, and then they have a shared experience that they can help each other with. Mm-hmm. So any experience is a valuable experience.
And let's talk a little bit about what happens in the therapy program exactly. Because so the horses are sort of in a natural state, right? I mean, they're not trained, or they're not riding horses or anything like that. I mean, you're dealing with the most important feature is that they're a horse.
Yes. Uh-huh. Exactly.
So what happens? You get a referral from...
Yeah, if I get a referral and it's indicated that equine therapy would be helpful, then we bring them out and introduce them to the horse in a gradual, gentle manner, and begin to develop a relationship. We do grooming, let them just calm down with the horse, and allow that alliance to start to form between the horse and the person. And the trust comes fairly rapidly because there's no threat from the horse. Even though it's big, it doesn't present that way. It presents as accepting and very supportive.
Now, I've heard that it's actually that the horse chooses the person. Is that the way it works? How's that happen?
Well, typically the first session, all the horses are out in the pasture. They're all just in a natural state all the time. And so we will walk out into the pasture, and the horses will see us coming, and they may approach, or they may just wait for us to get there. But then one of the horses, I don't know how this happens, but one of them will pick this client, and they'll come to work with them. And so we take that horse, and that's the one that has the tools that this person needs. Mm-hmm. And it's really quite miraculous, because the person seems to feel the honor of being chosen by that horse, and the intuitive dialogue starts right then, that this happened for a reason, and so the trust starts to build immediately too. So then we go to the grooming, and we start to work with the nonverbal communication and how to set that up so they can start doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And
what kind of objective measures do you use? I mean, I'm sure folks dealing with veterans are going to want to say, well, that's all well and good, but how do I know this person's actually getting better? I mean, what do you have that, or is it just we have to depend upon a more intuitive sense of how a person is reacting.
Well, they tell you, for one thing,
Yeah.
they tell you I'm feeling a lot better. I've had veterans say that after a session, this is the first time that I was able to drive my car home without watching every other vehicle on the road and every other person through their window. It was the first piece that I've had since I've been back from deployment. But in our treatment plans, we also have measurable objectives that we can mark progress. And we ask them if they want to journal, and if they want to share journals at the end of a treatment period, that's fine. You know, some things, sometimes the journal gives them a real good idea of how they're progressing. They can see that their writing is clearer, more open, stuff like that type of thing.
So the referral process, how's that exactly work? Who's doing the referring? How did they find you? Do you have to go out and sort of make people aware of what the services are, psychologists or doctors?
Well, it's a combination of things. The Soldiers Project refers a lot to me, and so they just say, make an appointment with George, and they come out and they start doing it. And sometimes the therapist that's treating them will want to be there in the session, and sometimes they'll just want the feedback from the session. A lot of the people that come are referred by other veterans that have gone through this, and they say, oh, this works pretty good, and you should try it. And then people that have been in the program or have seen this work in other areas besides veterans. For example, I do things with drug court and probation and things like that. They can refer, this would be good for a veteran if they knew one. So they just kind of show up like Donna, and
Do you have a waiting list? You only have, 6 horses, you said?
yeah, well, sometimes.
Yeah.
But the referral seems to be coming just about as much as I can handle right now.
Okay, well, that's a good situation.
Yeah.
We have some JPEGs that you brought with us, and if we can roll those pictures, George, if you'll narrate.
Okay, this is a picture of horses having fun and being horses. So the two in the foreground there are rolling on their backs, and they're just being horses. So
Horsing around, as it is.
they're horsing around, yeah. This is my core group. So they're having a conference here about the upcoming session that we're going to have. And this particular session was for a group of therapists that worked with veterans. So this is Cole, and he's one of the very sensitive therapy horses that I have. And his demeanor is usually kind of aloof and kind of slow to engage, and then he just bonds like a rock.
And he obviously knows his picture's being taken.
Yeah, he's watching us. Yeah. This is a part of the thing we do initially with groups, and it's called observation. And we just go in the arena with the horses, and we just all mingle, and they get to, the horse in this case has come up and is engaging this lady here.
Is that an Arabian? Or?
That's an Arabian. And then the horse behind, you can see that she's watching this whole situation. There's a horse in the right foreground that is also aware of that, and also Cole in the back. They're all attentive to this action, and this is something that's really important in the therapy, that the whole theater is involved in the therapy. So not only what's going on between the therapist and the horse and the client, but anything that's going around there is all part of the experience.
Right. Now, you told me that there was examples where the horse actually would shield the vet from you.
Yeah.
To give them space, I guess, and
Yeah.
they know better than you would as to what that person's feeling.
Yes, and that's a really, I'm glad you brought that up, because the horses can sense the level of injury or wound, psychological wound that the person is suffering. And so they will come to this, when they choose the person and they gauge the severity, they will just move this person off to safety. So they'll take them away from the other horses, they'll take them away from other people that might be in the arena, and they'll stand with them the entire session between me, so I have to work, like kind of around it.
So we have some more JPEGs. Yes, that one. What's happening here?
Okay, this is one of my favorite interventions that we use with groups, and all of these people are connected to the horses just by a ribbon. So and they have to move as a group through an obstacle course without talking and without pulling on the horses and without losing contact. So this is a exercise to help them work on working as a team, communicating non-verbally, and accomplishing a goal, which is to finish the obstacle course.
And I would imagine the horses know what's going on here because they've seen it before.
Well, yes, they do, but they still have to be part of this. So they aren't the ones that are gauging how it goes. I mean, if they want to go, they'll go. And if the horse gets loose, then they have to stop the thing and go catch them and bring them back. So that's all part of it. So the whole experience is one of problem solving in real time, which is very helpful in helping them develop or reestablish their own sense of self and their own confidence.
Do you find that some people don't have the patience to go through that, or they get frustrated at all?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so how does the horse help in that regard?
Well, sometimes they ignore them. They'll just let them get over it. I mean, a lot of this frustration is things that they're working out that are not really associated with the experience, but the experience exposes this for them. And so it's a really revealing thing that helps that we cover in the processing part.
We've got some more JPEGs. And this is more of what you were talking about, isn't it?
Yeah, so this is a group, and this was a group that works together in a corporation. So this is a team building exercise, and what they're doing is herding this horse around the arena. And the horse isn't going for it too much, but they have to do, in order to get the horse to go, they have to work together because they're all connected, which is the metaphor for their connection. In order to get their job accomplished at work, they need to work together.
And they're not allowed to, in this exercise, to talk, right?
No talking, no touching.
Yeah. Next.
This is having fun. So here the horse is completely free to engage or not in this exercise. So these two ladies are having him jump over an obstacle. And it's up to the horse whether he trusts them enough to go over that obstacle with them. And obviously he does, and he seems to be having a pretty good time. So a lot of these experiences, although therapeutic, are really healthful and enjoyable.
And play.
Yeah. And it's about playing and having a really good experience right in the moment. So I like this picture because...
yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
And this is an older picture, it's not... Right?
Yeah. This is an example of one of the exercises we do with the veterans. And you can't see it really clearly, but there are two lead ropes connected to the horse, and they are going from one side or the other and connected to one or another of the veterans. And the barrels represent obstacles in their life. And so the object of the exercise is to get through these obstacles. And so they name the obstacles, and as they go through, they confront the obstacle, and this is what the obstacle is. And curiously enough, or maybe not, that most of the obstacles, number one, is the VA and getting their benefits. And so then there's reintegration with their families. Things that are major in their life that they need to overcome, and in order to do that, they need to accept that this is in fact not a real obstacle, and it has a size and a shape and a manageability that they can then address. So this is really fun.
Next.
And this is
everybody, I have to tell you, at the station wants a copy of this picture.
and
it's
so
beautiful.
This is the unity that these two have got it. And you can see this. You can't see it real well, but this horse is laying on the ground, and he's sitting right next to it, and they're completely together. in this moment, and they stayed there for probably half an hour.
And how long is the therapy? Is this, I would imagine it's not the first day they've been.
This particular one, I think, was the second day.
Really?
Yeah.
So the bonding took place that fast?
It moves really very rapidly. From a clinical comparison, the trust that is established happens almost immediately. And so it removes a lot of trust barriers that happen in clinical situations because the horse isn't doing anything except accepting and supporting. Right. And somehow they transmit that to the person nonverbally.
And so it must be a surprise to the vet. I mean, they don't have this experience very often, right?
Yeah, it's a big surprise because and it's not uncommon for them just to break into tears, the first session.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of that myself. Just working with them. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about in the remaining time we have the role the family plays in the therapy. I dealt with folks before. One of the barriers that a lot of PTSD people says, my family is a barrier. They don't understand. They don't have any patience with me, so forth and so on. How do you get over that? Is that a real issue, and if so, how do you get over that?
Well, that's a huge issue, and it's true. Very often the fact is that they don't understand, but part of the reason for that is that the vet's keeping them at arm's length. So the wife or husband may be walking on eggshells for years and building up resentment. So the more they understand, the better. Not to say that the vet needs to go into gory detail some of the traumatic stuff that they experienced, but to explain what they're experiencing on an emotional level, or what the anger may be about, or to include them in some treatment, and then to allow the family members to get their own treatment.
The film that we'll be showing tomorrow evening has some excellent examples of how a family adapts to a veteran with PTSD. And it is truly difficult to watch in many cases. Children have been known to start to adopt the symptoms of PTSD themselves. Even though they have not had a particularly traumatic interaction even with the parent, they start to mimic the symptoms that the parent shows. For
unease.
Hypervigilance.
Right, hypervigilance.
That kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about hypervigilance. So what happens in a wartime situation is it's a protective mechanism to be hypervigilant, and then when you come back into try to get reintegrated, it's actually a very big obstacle.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
But how do you just let go of that? It was useful once. Why would you?
Right. Particularly with soldiers. I mean, of course, they're trained not to be thinking individually, but as a group, and it's for the betterment. So I follow my orders, and now you get back into society, and there's nobody telling you what to do. I have heard stories about accidents that people with PTSD get into because they become so hypervigilant, everything seems to be coming at them at once.
Yes.
Is that typical?
Well, it happens, certainly.
Yeah. What kind of therapy how would you get them to go past that?
Well, I would refer them to someone like Paige. I want to make it really clear that Welcome Home Vets does not itself provide services. Right. We pay for services. But situations like that are common. One of the reasons that it is so difficult to treat post-traumatic stress disorder is that there are actually physiological changes that take place within the brain, and this has been demonstrated time and again. So, some of the stuff that Donna is doing, I'm sure works with that misalignment that has occurred physiologically, and probably with some of the other stuff that is beyond physiology even. It's not all psychological. In other words, it's not just trained behavior. Yeah. There's actually some changes that take place.
Right. And as we, have talked before, TBI, particularly in Afghanistan, with all these IUDs, that they get exposed to concussive experiences almost as a regular part of their tour duty. And, some people think as many as 20 to 25% of returning vets will have some form of TBI, which is an interesting interplay between PTSD and TBI because some of the same symptoms are involved.
Yes.
Right. Two of the hallmark differences is that with TBI, there's sensitivity to light
Yes.
and headaches that are not common just for PTSD.
Right, which are manifestations of having had a concussion.
Correct.
Yeah, and so I think that's part of the issue too. Is as you point out, the brain, how they view the world, or their acuity and so forth, is redone, and so I don't think they're imagining things happening at a faster pace or threatening. They really feel that. That's
They
the way
feel
they
that.
perceive it. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. My background is in psychiatric nursing, and I do feel an obligation to point out that sometimes medications can be very helpful in controlling symptoms. It's not curable. It's not a curable disorder, but medications can help. They shouldn't be by any means the only approach, though.
And it's sort of a syndrome. What happens with PTSD is that one thing aggravates the next thing, and it's kind of an interactive kind of situation, so you have to attack it on a bunch of levels. It's not
Exactly.
Absolutely.
usually,
Many levels.
So, Ram, tell me if you had to, the viewer at home is saying, well, I wonder how did he really get better through this therapy? What is about what Donna and her folks have done with you and for you, do you think it's most effective, and why?
Well, one of the most effective things is probably the counseling that I've received. And counseling for myself, but also marriage family counseling as well. So I've done both things. That really has helped out as far as, what's going on with me and the family. I was just listening to, my post-traumatic stuff, it changes. And new things come up. And so I've learned through therapy with journaling and with working with my counselor, I was trying to figure out, new ways of approaching the family and being able to be safe in doing so. Recently, we got a new dog, and we had another dog, and the dog would sleep in the bed, and now we have the second dog. Well, that second dog triggered something in me. And having two of these animals next to me was completely different than just one. And so I immediately went into this feeling of being completely trapped because of these animals pressing up against me, versus just the one little dog was like no big deal. So I had to be able to approach my wife in a way and say, hey, this is what's going on, and I never was able to do that before. So it's taken this time in therapy to kind of be able to open up, and in journaling be able to see what I'm going through right there in front of me.
Right.
And so that therapy has been really good. And then with Donna, being able to be on the table and just in my daily life to be able to get balance in my life,
Right.
and be able to slow down and take things a lot slower. And that's been able to really help me.
Right. Yeah, and I think my experience with Donna is that she is able to see who you are maybe better than you can in some
Yeah.
ways,
I think
And
that's
so
true.
I think so one of the issues you have to deal with is avoiding triggers and trying to deal with certain triggers like noises. And I know some of my friends have PTSD. They don't like to go out at night. They certainly don't like trees. They feel like they have to be in the open so they can see everything. Is that a common?
Yes, nighttime's worse.
Yeah.
That's a biggie.
So I would imagine part of what you do is to try to avoid putting yourself in trigger situations.
Yeah, I think it's gotten a lot better for me over the years. So my case isn't necessarily severe.
Yeah.
But I don't try to avoid. I really want to be a part of society.
Right.
And that's my goal.
Right. So
You know.
truly assimilating back into society.
Correct.
Yeah. George, what would you say to the people who might be listening about equine therapy? I imagine some people don't actually believe in what you're talking about. Has that ever been the case?
Yes, they think
Skeptics who say, how could this be?
well, some people think that I'm just playing with my horses.
Yeah.
And
That's not entirely untrue, though.
no, it's not. It's not at all.
I mean, being a horse, you're keeping your horses horses.
Yeah. And I just say, just come and take a look, because it's something that you really have to experience. I have a lot of difficulty explaining the energy that happens during the session, but just participating in it for 10 minutes, you can already feel the change. So it's just, take a look.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, George, I just wanted to add that what George is doing absolutely is phenomenal. And I went with Donna to Montana and experienced what George is doing on a small level, but in the short time, in the week that I was there, just looking into the horse's eye that I bonded with was life-changing.
Mm-hmm.
Not having that trust, I broke down that second that I bonded with that horse. Mm-hmm. So what he's doing is just phenomenal for the veterans.
And we, when I worked in the legislature, we did go out to visit a farm that was doing horse therapy, equine therapy with young disturbed kids, mm-hmm. and the change in them is just dramatic. They're hostile and you can't be hostile with a horse. I mean, you really, it's hard, because they are so trusting, but they're so big. And, you really get a perspective on who you are when you deal with a horse at that level. Well, listen, we've got about a minute left. I want to thank you all for coming down and talking about your programs. And, we do our part to honor our veterans and make sure that they have supportive communities to come back to. And I think the more people hear about what the needs are, the more likely we are to really give the veterans what they need. I mean, I think we'll all agree that we're in better shape than we were after Vietnam, where untold trauma occurred and nobody seemed to understand. So that's about all we have time for today. So this is Paul Minicucci signing off on Veterans Day 2011. Bye-bye.
Good one.